I wanted to make a video for all of the beginners out there that serves as a one-stop shop for all of the info you need when starting out at the gym. Now, I have gone through all of this info before, so if you're a regular viewer, then none of this will be news to you, but I did want to put it all into one place, pretty much just to save the newbies out there from having to watch 20 different videos just to get the info that they need. Essentially, I want this to act as a gateway drug, right? A stepping stone towards a life of lifting and fitness and just generally getting massive like me. I'm not massive, I'm small. Anyway, in the spirit of brevity, I'm going to gloss over some of the final details and just go through the core fundamentals that you need to hit the ground running. There are chapters along the bottom, so you can skip around to whichever bit you care about most. I'll also put some text on the screen just to add some notes to whatever I'm saying, but it might not always be there for long enough for you to actually read it while you're listening to the video, so if you care about that, then you can pause the video and read. Alright, let's do it. And this video is sponsored by the Joey D Foundation for raising awareness about the importance of smashing the like button and leaving comments saying, Joe, you're sound. Thanks for all the content over the years. You've really been a beacon of hope and tranquility in a world. Alright, let's deal with training first. We're going to do this pretty quick fire. Should you train at home before going to the gym? In a word, no. You don't have to get in any kind of shape before you go to the gym. You don't even have to learn how to do any exercises before you go to the gym, because that is what the gym's for. If you're apprehensive at first, then it's understandable, but just try and go with a friend or go when the gym is particularly quiet to begin with. Understand that it's a little bit scary for some people, but it's worth just ripping off the plaster. Which training split should you choose? Training split just refers to how you divide up your muscle groups between workouts. I'm going to put some examples on the screen if you want to pause and read. Of these, you'll actually be able to make gains using any as a beginner. However, if I had to order them, I would put them in this order. What is frequency, intensity, and volume? You'll hear these terms thrown around quite a lot, and really they're just fancy, sciencey ways of saying pretty simple things. They are quite integral to your training, so they are things that need to be considered if you're not following a training program. If you are following a training program, then they should already be incorporated into that program. As a basic rule, hit each muscle group at least once a week, but ideally twice if you're training often enough. Perform a minimum of 10 direct sets per muscle group per week, more if you can, and take 90% of your sets to between 1 and 3 reps away from failure. Which rep ranges are best? To keep this brief, where it could be quite long and drawn out, if your goal is hypertrophy, then the majority of your sets should be between 5 and 15 reps. You can still build muscle outside of that rep range, but it becomes a bit difficult practically. It's probably a good idea to do some high and some low rep sets for most muscle groups, whether that's in different workouts over the course of the week or in entirely different training blocks. Do you need a training program? Yes, go on my website and buy one immediately. I'm just kidding, you don't really. Now, a training program can take away a lot of the hassle of having to think about things like rep ranges, volume, intensity, frequency yourself. But whilst it would probably be beneficial, you certainly don't need a training program when you're starting out. That's because you're probably going to get some newbie gains. You'll probably make gains anyway without the added benefit of all that structure that you'd get from a program. Also, it's a time when you want to kind of experiment, try out some new exercises in the gym, see what you like, what you don't like, and you don't want to be restricted to what's prescribed in your training program while you're doing that. I would certainly recommend moving towards using a training program further down the line. Do you need a personal trainer? Most people aren't going to need a PT as such, particularly if you already have a program to follow. But I do think if you're really not confident with some of the more complicated lifts, then it could certainly be beneficial to at least get a PT for a few sessions to coach you through those lifts. You can of course watch videos on form and technique on YouTube, but it's not quite the same as having somebody in person there to give you cues and actually critique your form while you're doing it. Now, whether you need a PT to stand over you and count your reps for the entire duration of a program is really entirely dependent on how much motivation you have to get through it and how capable you are of carrying out yourself. Free weights or machines, both have their place. You can sometimes get a better mind-muscle connection if you're into that on machines, because a lot of the stabilizing of the weight is taken care of, but an obvious consequence of that is that you don't build that stabilizing strength. So often your strength on a machine might not carry over into being strong at the free weight alternative. I would try and start workouts with the most taxing exercises, then work down to the least. So a typical workout might be a free weight compound exercise to begin with, some machine compound exercises exercises, or the more taxing isolations in the middle, and then the small muscle group isolations to finish. Do you need to do cardio? Well, if you're trying to lose fat, then doing some cardio will certainly enable you to keep calories a little bit higher and just make the whole process a little bit less unpleasant. If you're trying to gain muscle, then a base level of fitness can still help with your intra-set recovery, as well as generally promoting good heart health as well. So in a nutshell, everyone should do some. People trying to lose fat should do more. Okay, let's talk about diet. Cutting first or bulking first, or both or neither? Well, first you need to decide if you initially want to build fat or lose muscle. Now, you build fat or lose muscle? What the you don't want to do that. New fat gain and muscle loss program, link in description. You need to decide if you want to build muscle first or lose fat first. Now, you probably want to do both, but we all kind of want to do both to some extent, but it's usually quicker, more productive, more efficient to go at these one at a time rather than trying to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. One thing to note is that even if you don't have any clue about the concept of bulking and cutting or building muscle or losing fat, then just the training stimulus alone will probably make some kind of difference to your physique, even if you just continue eating however you were beforehand, right? Now, if you just continue eating however you were beforehand, but make a conscious effort to just increase your protein, don't think about anything else, and you start training, then that's going to make even more of a difference. So initially, the important thing is really just about getting in the gym and eating a bit more protein. Do you need to track your calories and macronutrients? Now, if you want to make the most progress in the shortest time and be absolutely on point with everything, then tracking your intake is for sure the way to go. But as a beginner, the truth is you can probably make some good progress without doing so, especially if you're trying to gain muscle. It's probably more helpful if you're trying to lose fat, but even then, I would always encourage people to see if they can make good progress without tracking first, and then keep that tracking in the arsenal to bring out later. I say this because you can get a bit of food tracking fatigue, it can get a bit tedious and a bit boring, and you can really lose enthusiasm for doing it, so I probably wouldn't recommend that someone starts out doing it and then does it forever. Instead, I'd really just use it as a tool and employ it when necessary. You do obviously have to eat a varied diet for your general health and try and keep your protein intake high enough. As a rule of thumb, you can just make sure that you're having 30 to 40 grams of protein with each meal and a protein shake after you train, and that should get you there or thereabouts with your protein intake. Having a protein shake immediately after you train is certainly not essential, provided you are consuming enough protein over the course of the day, but I'm just saying it because it can be a good cue to help people hit their protein intake. If you choose not to track, then you should certainly at least keep tabs on your body weight. You should probably do it anyway, because then you can see if it's moving in the right direction, and if it's not, you can eat a bit more or a bit less, whatever the case may be. Setting calories and macronutrients. If you do track, you can just start with some very general amounts. Multiply your body weight in pounds by 13 if you want to lose fat, or by 18 if you want to build muscle to get your starting calories. Take that as a starting point and then monitor your weight and make sure it's moving in the right direction. And if not, then increase or decrease your calories by small amounts until you settle into a nice rate of weight change. Now, this is quite a basic formula as it doesn't take into account your age, height, gender, activity level, body composition, right? So if you want something a little bit more detailed, then I will link a calorie calculator in the description below. However, even if you do use that, there is so much individual variation that you're still only getting to a point where you can then start the trial and error process from. It's still only just a best guess to start from and build upon. As for macronutrients, then some good ballpark figures are 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, 0.5 grams of fat per pound of body weight, and then the remaining calories you can make up from carbs. Do you need a meal plan? If you have trouble with adherence, then a meal plan can certainly give you some structure and predictability that can make that a lot easier. But long term, it's going to be much more convenient for you to learn to get used to tracking your food intake as you go throughout the day, if you do choose to track. Okay, a few points about recovery. How many rest days should you take? Being a complete beginner, you could make progress training 3 times a week for sure, but I also think it's quite a good idea to try and capitalize on your newbie gains whilst you can. So if you can make it to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, then I would say that's ideal. I don't think there's any need and potentially not really much benefit in training more than 5 times per week at this stage. So 2 good rest days. And if you can distribute those rest days evenly, i.e. 1 midweek and 1 on the weekend, then that would also be great. Sleep. Quite simply, just get as much as possible. It's going to affect your performance, your recovery, your hormones even. And so if you can make a good routine in terms of your bedtimes and the times you get up, then that will certainly help you create a consistent and productive sleeping pattern. Alcohol. Now, this is a question that I get asked quite a lot, probably just because the age that people start the gym gym typically tends to coincide with the age that they start going out and drinking a lot, right? And so you might not want to hear it, but excessive drinking, specifically binge drinking, will hinder your progress. And it's probably quite a linear relationship in the sense that the more you drink, probably the more of an impact it's going to have. Now, I understand people got to have a life. Going out is probably a big part of uni for a lot of people. And so by all means, at the start, just do whatever you want to do and see if you make progress. You actually might still make good enough progress that you're happy with going out and drinking 2 or 3 times a week. Now, as I say, it will be hindered. And if you're not happy with that progress, then you can just maybe think about drinking less. For young people, it's not typically the calories from alcohol that tend to be the problem, although it can be for some. It's more the impact that it has on your performance in the gym, and also things like your sleep quality that obviously has a knock-on effect on your recovery. Supplements. Do you absolutely need any supplements? If you get enough micronutrients and the right macronutrients from your diet, then no, nothing is absolutely essential. Which are the most important? I'd say the building blocks of a supplement stack are just a lean whey protein powder and a creatine monohydrate. I say those two because the whey will just help to ensure that you're hitting your protein requirements consistently, and the creatine is essentially just the most studied sports supplement on earth, and it's simply a statement of fact to say that it works. It also happens to be cheap, which is great. Which are further down the queue. So instead of giving you a fish, let me instead teach you to fish. So there may be a lot of supplements out there that are some benefit to you, whether that's directly through helping your performance in the gym, or more indirectly in terms of helping your recovery, or in any number of ways. And here's the secret: you don't need to understand the biological mechanisms behind why supplements do or do not work, right? All you really need to do is to be able to use Google and to look at and digest information critically. There are some very helpful websites such as examine.com that will collate all of the scientific evidence around a supplement and tell you what the proposed effects are, how strong those proposed effects are, and what the scientific consensus seems to be based on the evidence. Now, for a lot of supplements, there just isn't enough data to draw solid conclusions just because the research hasn't been done. However, there may be some kind of signal there that indicates some kind of benefit, and so at that point you have to make the choice whether you think it's worth spending the money in the hopes that this supplement makes a difference, or if you're going to wait and only spend that money on supplements that are more proven and tried and tested. How long does it take to see progress? This is a big question because the progress people see is usually directly related to the motivation they feel, and then has a knock-on effect on their adherence or whether they carry on or give up, right? And that's why some realistic expectations are certainly helpful. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a one-size-fits-all for the rate of progress that you can make, because genetic variation does exist. Now, it's probably some kind of bell curve distribution where there will be some people with really bad genetics for bodybuilding and building muscle, some with really exceptional genetics, and most people somewhere in between, around average. Now, you're probably around average, but you could easily be below or above. So I think the best thing to do is just go in with fairly low expectations and assume that you're going to have to do a lot of work for quite little reward. Regardless of your genetics, you can get to a place where you are happy with your physique. And so beyond that, what else really is there? If it takes you a little bit longer than somebody else, then I mean, lucky you got to go on a longer journey. Now, aside from genetics, your rate of progress will also depend on a lot of other things, such as your age, your gender, how new to train you are, and things like that. But let's say that you are absolutely on point and consistent from the very start. I would say ballpark, with average to good genetics, you could probably aim to gain maybe 1.5 to 2 pounds of muscle every month under absolutely ideal circumstances. Now, that won't last forever. It probably won't even last for very long. I would say once you've been lifting for a few years, it might take you 6 months to get that 2 pounds of muscle. And once you've been lifting for a decade upwards, then getting 2 pounds of muscle might be like in terms of years rather than months. Now obviously I'm just talking about muscle gain, so your overall weight will increase more than that because you will inevitably gain some fat. Okay, I think that is most of the basics covered. I hope that was helpful. I'm sure there are lots of things that I haven't mentioned, and so if you have extra questions, pop them in the comments. I will try to get back to them. So apologies if I just told the regular viewers a lot of stuff they already know, but I mean, also thanks for watching if you sat there through all that, but it was already obvious to you. Alright, see you later.
Jordy Lenny is my hero.